Inside a material processing facility, a worker manages heavy stone slabs positioned near a cutting machine. Suddenly, a large slab becomes unstable and tips forward due to a shift in weight, creating a hazardous situation for the operator in the fall zone. This incident highlights the critical need to secure heavy loads during processing and reminds us to never stand in the direct line of fire where unstable materials might fall. In a chemical processing plant, workers are inspecting a large industrial tank when an apparent valve failure causes a sudden, rapid release of pressure. The resulting release of energy disrupts the immediate area, serving as a stark reminder that pressure vessels require rigorous maintenance. Workers must always verify pressure levels and follow strict lockout procedures before approaching such equipment. An auto mechanic is working near an open service pit while a vehicle is being positioned nearby. The driver appears to lose control, possibly confusing the pedals, causing the car to accelerate suddenly into the pit area. To prevent such accidents, clear communication between drivers and ground guides is vital, and physical barriers should be used around open pits during vehicle maneuvering. A group of workers moves a tall metal scaffold structure across a paved area without noticing the overhead environment. As they push the frame, the top makes contact with high-voltage power lines, sending an electrical current down to the workers. This scenario emphasizes the importance of surveying the area for overhead hazards and maintaining a safe distance from power lines at all times. A vehicle is being loaded onto a flatbed tow truck when the securing mechanism fails, causing the car to roll rapidly backward off the ramp toward the operator. This mechanical failure illustrates why operators should never stand directly behind or below a load being winched. Regular equipment checks on cables and winches are essential to prevent failure during recovery operations. At a construction site, a crane lifts a bundle of heavy metal beams when the rigging suddenly slips. The load detaches mid-air and falls to the ground near the workers. This incident underscores that proper rigging techniques and load balancing are essential for crane safety, and establishing a clear exclusion zone underneath lifted loads is mandatory to protect personnel. In a busy commercial kitchen, staff transport a large, open container of hot liquid when one worker loses their footing. The container tips over, spilling the high-temperature contents onto the floor and the personnel. To minimize thermal risks, slip-resistant footwear is crucial, and carts with sealed lids should always be used when transporting hot substances. At a metal recycling yard, a worker introduces an ignition source near a sealed metal drum. Residual fumes inside the container ignite instantly, causing a rapid expansion of gas and a concussive blast. This serves as a critical warning never to apply heat or open flames to sealed drums without verifying they are completely empty and purged of hazardous residues. A driver prepares to unload a truck filled with heavy timber logs, but as the side restraints are released, the load shifts due to gravity. One of the heavy timbers falls outward, striking the individual standing next to the truck. When releasing cargo straps, workers must always assume the load has shifted and stand clear or use remote release mechanisms to avoid the fall path. A machinist working with a long metal bar on a rotating lathe gets their loose clothing caught on the spinning material. Although they pull away just in time, this near miss demonstrates that loose clothing, gloves, and jewelry are major hazards near rotating machinery. Wearing proper fitted work attire is a primary defense against entanglement. A large semi-truck reverses into a loading dock bay, while a worker stands in the driver's blind spot. Unable to see the ground personnel, the driver continues reversing, pinning the worker against the platform. Because loading docks are high-risk zones, drivers must strictly follow spotter signals, and pedestrians should never position themselves between a reversing vehicle and a fixed object. A sanitation worker sweeps a narrow street while a car attempts to park nearby. The driver loses control of the vehicle, surging backward and striking the worker. Situational awareness is critical for street workers, and while high-visibility clothing helps, physical barriers or cones are often necessary to create a safe buffer zone from unpredictable traffic. A worker opens the rear doors of a transport truck, carrying loose pipes that have shifted against the latch. As the door opens, a heavy pipe tumbles out unexpectedly, striking the worker. To prevent these avalanche scenarios, loads that can roll must be secured independently of the doors, and workers should always open doors cautiously from a safe position. In a textile factory, a worker gets too close to the intake rollers of a large winding machine. The machinery catches their clothing, pulling them into the mechanism. This incident highlights that machine guarding is essential to prevent contact with nip points, and workers must be trained to keep a safe distance from intake zones while ensuring emergency stops are accessible. An operator feeding material into a hydraulic press places a hand inside the danger zone to make an adjustment. The machine cycles unexpectedly, clamping down on the hand. Safety sensors must never be bypassed, and systems like two-hand controls or light curtains are vital to ensure the operator's hands are completely clear before the machine applies pressure. A worker stands near a large rotating industrial drum when a piece of material they are holding gets caught in the spinner. The immense rotational force pulls the worker into the machinery. Workers must respect the kinetic energy of large rotating machines, never hold material being fed into a spinner, and ensure automatic shutoff systems are active. A forklift moves through a warehouse aisle and, due to a blind spot, strikes a pedestrian walking nearby. Segregating pedestrian and forklift traffic is the most effective safety measure in these environments. Where paths must cross, eye contact between the driver and pedestrian must be established before anyone moves to prevent collisions. An overhead crane moving a massive roll of paper suffers a structural failure in the hoist mechanism. The heavy load detaches and falls to the factory floor. This failure reminds us that regular inspections of hoist brakes and cables are mandatory. And more importantly, no one should ever walk or work under a suspended load, regardless of how secure it appears. A worker uses their foot to manually adjust a paper roll on a high-speed winder, but the friction catches their leg, pulling them into the machine. This severe entrapment scenario reinforces the rule that feet or hands should never be used to align materials on moving equipment. Proper tools and automated systems must be used to keep limbs away from intake zones. In a tight warehouse yard, a pedestrian walks behind a reversing truck, assuming the driver is aware of their presence. The truck continues backward, resulting in an impact. While backup alarms are helpful, pedestrians must assume they are invisible to truck drivers and stay completely clear of reversing paths to ensure their safety.